Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, May 6th. Mr. Clerk, if you could go over tonight's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, after the Pledge of Allegiance, we're going to have open forum, and then we're going to move to the interim town administrator report. And then we'll go on with our appointments. At 6:35, budget presentation, Southeastern Regional School. 6:45, Stephen Rollins from Municipal Services, Inc., to present proposal for town administrator search. Bernard Lynch from Community Paragon Associates, LLC, to present the same, new proposal for the same position. 7:45, Bob Lynch and Mary Flanders Caddy from Edward Collins Center to present their presentations for town administrator. And we have one action item.
All right, thank you. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Right. Anyone here for open forum this evening? All right, seeing no one, we'll close open forum. And we're going to go right into our town administrator report. Mr. Longo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just so for the record, I am going to recuse myself from those interviews. That's why I'm grateful that you moved me up on the agenda. I won't be here for the interviews for the town manager search. So I just want to share with you what I've been doing, and it's been pretty busy. The days all go by very quickly, and most of the time I'm working on the budget, and I'm grateful for the fiscal team that I'm working with, the town accountant, Phyllis and Paula Wolf, and Melissa as well in the treasurer's office. And we're very close to fine-tuning the budget. In fact, I'm going to leave here and meet with the Finance Committee Chair, Michelle Ahern, and try to build consensus on the budget, so when I come to you, we're all together, and hopefully you'll agree with them as well. So I'm spending a lot of time doing that. I also got the capital budgets from Glenn Tatari.
Tatry.
That's what I said. So we've got everything together now. It's just a matter of making sure everything's balanced, and then we put it in a format for town meeting. And I will make a presentation, hopefully, at or before your next meeting on where we are with the budget. And it seems like it's coming along. And of course, the transition always creates a little higher level of anxiety, but I think it's important that we do what we need to do based on what you've done in the past. Going forward, I probably would have some recommendations for changes, maybe to leave to my successor. But it's been, I'm grateful for the support I've had building the budget. I had a meeting last week with Doug Stevenson, and that's your broker. And I more or less discovered with assistance from the town accountant that even though we talk about solar arrays, the town's really conduit for the solar arrays, and we benefit, they benefit the people who develop the solar arrays by using the town as the conduit for certain benefits. And there's really very minimal or no risk at all in terms of what revenue we get. So it's made the electric utility a little bit of a challenge. I think the arrays are less than 2 years old, so we're still working on that, and we're having budget discussions about that. But I have to tell you, since I've dealt with some solar arrays, that that your broker is very fair and reasonable, because most of the brokers ask to be paid by kilowatt hour, which means it's a never-ending volume of dollars they're paid. He's getting a flat rate, which is very, very good. And I also heard that he doesn't typically provide his bill, so he's not looking for the dollar. He's really been a big help to the town. And we can have more to talk about that if the board wants to going forward. But I thought, because of our relationship with the arrays, that it was more of a town project. And I know it's on private property. Really, we have little to do with the results. But we do, because we're the conduit, we get a certain percentage of the revenue, so that's been a good thing. And I did look at the agreements that exist, but it's really less of an issue for us for compliance, other than we make sure we get the money that we're promised. And again, that promise is based on how much electricity the solar arrays develop. I've also had I continue to meet on a weekly basis with the fiscal team, and we're starting to focus on creating a reserve policy. I know how important reserves are here, but they should be directed by you in terms of what the value should be of that. And in some cases, for example, the stabilization could be, say, 5% of the operating budget or 10%. and other reserves as well, like free cash, and it's going to be interesting to deal with the capital stabilization fund, but it's good to have a definition of what they are so that everybody's on common ground rather than just building the reserves without direction from the board. So I'm working on that. And we spent a lot of time with the Mark Abraham study. So now the fiscal team, we're going through the recommendations he made, and we're sharing who is going to follow up with what recommendation he made. And many were relative to the budget process. So it's really difficult at this stage of the game to change the process significantly because it takes a little bit of an education. But we're still going to pursue some of the recommendations, and I will have some recommendations going forward. So. And the budget information, I mean, there's a lot of information there. And when I look at it, it's more than I've seen in any other budgets. And I think you could do the same, keep the same level of transparency, but maybe in a more abridged version. So, but I can have more to say about that when the time comes. You're aware that we posted the veterans position. So we're getting applications, and what I hope to do is to screen them for you and present you with 3 finalists. Rebecca will have the resumes. You can always look through them, and we'll interview more than necessary probably, but it's also good to give people a chance to see how the process works. We'll try to be as professional as we can, and sometimes that helps when people don't get the job. They realize that it wasn't just handed to them, whoever is appointed in that job. Also, I had a meeting last week with the Old Colony Regional Planning Commission, and we will pursue a Green Communities application. We got a grant for $7,500, and Old Colony Regional Planning Commission will put the Green Communities application together for us.
Great.
So there's a little bit of work, but if that's successful, and probably I'd work with the team, probably the facilities manager, maybe the DPW director, we stand to gain about $150,000 that you can use for green projects, and you've got some here. I was surprised to see that the lighting wasn't one of them. Now, maybe it is in this building, but the LED lighting is where you can get an immediate savings because of the LED being the most efficient. But there's lots of things, and that's what you'll learn in that application process. So we'll get a $7,500 grant, and OPC, the Old Regional Planning Council, will help us put the Green Communities application, and I'll have a lot more to share with you going forward. And I met with the school superintendent. I'm going to meet with the schools tomorrow. I haven't had a chance to spend much time with them, and the school business manager. And the last thing is I did share some information with you that I met with the department heads. We had a department head meeting. I was very impressed for a group that's going through a transition. Everybody was very participative, or whatever the word is. There was a lot of good feedback and a lot of support for each other, and that's really key, because sometimes during this period it's full with anxiety, but I could see here everybody wants to work together, and they still want to work together even though they've been through a lot. So I was impressed with that meeting. That's all I have this evening. I can share more with you if you have questions, but I won't be far. I'll be in the other room. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rocco.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
And I'll move on to a budget presentation with Southeastern Regional School. Ms. Lopez, Mr. Dutcher, how you doing?
Good, good. I don't know if you've received copies. You should have. I printed up a big one. So,
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
that's the nice ones here. In columns. There was one change in the one that was.
You guys want a copy?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank you.
So, good evening. I'm joined today by Joe Dutcher. As you know, Joe is the elected representative from East Bridgewater that sits on the 10-member school committee. So tonight, what I'll do is I'll just really briefly go over our overall budget, but really focus in on East Bridgewater and some of the kind of the trends and what we've seen and so forth. So our overall budget for FY20 is up 4.7%. $28,589,574 is the FY 2020 budget request. We continue to operate at net school spending, so our budget is based on the minimum required by law under the Chapter 70 formula. We actually are a little bit over this year, $125,000. but where the school committee voted to take that out of E&D. And the reason for that is this budget was based on the governor's budget, which changes between the House and the Senate. So because we're at net school spending, what happens is if we don't, if the House and Senate increase the minimum amount, then we fall in danger of being below net school spending. So that's why we do that. So as you know, sometimes the final budget doesn't come out till end of June, well after town meeting. Yeah. So that allows for that cushion there. Transportation of students is, as you know, regional school districts can't have an obligation to provide free transportation. We cannot charge fees to our students to ride the bus to and from school. The total cost of that is $1.5 million. The state is supposed to reimburse the communities 100% subject to appropriation. They've never, they've been as low as 26%. What we do is it's based on our current, so the money we receive this year goes right back to you next year. So this was basically last year's amount that we received, just over $1 million. So the net assessment is $548, $563, and that gets divided on a per pupil basis among the 9 towns. So the good news on that is just right now they're looking at funding it at about 80% for next year. So you won't see that this year, but you should see that next year. So hopefully that'll hold through the Senate and the budget and the conference committees. The only other expenses there is our MSBA, the $34 million renovation project that we did quite a few years ago now. We out of that the $361,000 bond that we bonded, the principal and interest payments on that, $169,725 comes out of our adult ed receipts. So we've held true to our promise that we're gonna that we would not go up on capital assessments. That $192,000 has been there at least 20 years, and we've been able to maintain that. That ESCO payment is something that needs to be disclosed, which is a performance contract that we had done about 8 or 9 years ago, and that after 3 years, that falls outside the operating budget, but we need to disclose that as budget time. We also had a reserve fund that we set up about 6 years ago for retirees, unused sick days and vacation buyback and so forth. That is actually fully funded, so you see that for this year it's 0. So it's fully funded, so there is no assessment to the communities. We were able to fund that, which was nice. And then for the first time, the school committee has voted to put a little bit into the OPEB reserve, $50,000, but it's coming out of our E&D account, not out of assessments. Okay, but again, that needs to be disclosed at budget time to the communities. What I'll do is I'll jump, I think, a few pages ahead. I'll start with this one here. That's kind of a bunch of pie charts and so forth, about 4 or 5 pages in. This is something that we started to share with the communities a few years ago. Some communities wanted to know kind of how do they relate to their member communities. East Bridgewater is second to Brockton in terms of the amount of state aid you get about $8,229 per student in state aid. The total amount that we get per pupil doesn't change. It's the same across all 9 communities. The difference is the amount of state aid that the towns get and the city gets. So you can see, for example, the city of Brockton looks like about 80% or so in terms of state aid, and conversely, the town of Sharon only gets about 15% or 20% of state aid, okay? And that's based on the wealth, aggregate wealth model that's been in effect since 2001. The next page is really the page that focuses on East Bridgewater. The assessment for FY20, $770,668 is up $19,503 over this current year. That's an increase of 2.5%. Enrollment is down 1 student, 79 and 78, and that enrollment it looks like it is stabilized. There was a bump there about 6 or 7 years ago. I think that was when the new school was going up and so forth. Those students have since graduated, so So historically, if you go back, over the last 20 years or so, 15, 20 years, it's around 80 students. So you're right there. East Bridgewater, Mansfield, Norton, Easton are all around 80 students. So the biggest thing that's affecting the assessment is the town growth. The municipal revenue growth factor for the town of East Bridgewater is 4.20, which is above the state average. What that means is property values in East Bridgewater are going up more than on average than the state, and also the income of its residents is going up as well. So one of a kind of a quick way that we've determined how you can kind of guess what your assessment is going to be the following year. If you take that growth factor that comes out with your cherry sheets around November or so, and you see that 4.2%, and you multiply that times kind of that per pupil cost. So if I took the FY 19 budget, the per pupil cost of $9,508, and I multiplied that by 1.04, I would get a number of 9,907. If I multiplied that by the 78 students, 772,000 roughly would be where we would guess it should come in at. So we're pretty close. At 7, we're actually a little bit under that. And you could actually do the same thing for the town of Easton for all the students that attend Easton. You could take that 7,104, multiply it by 1.04, and get you pretty close. So if you wanted to start kind of budgeting, where do we think we're going to be, you could actually start doing that in the winter. So that's kind of a nice little tip there. So the next couple of pages, I kind of skipped the page, which is just the profile for the East Bridgewater. That's actually not even Southeastern. That's East Bridgewater Public Schools. But the next one is kind of a nice one again from a planning standpoint. It shows the school-age children all the way from pre-kindergarten all right through high school for Easton. And just one of the things, and this is probably not news to you, but if you look at full-day kindergarten, there's 143 students. I don't know if you see that. And then in elementary is 810 students. That means it's about 162 students per grade level. And then in the middle school, there's 183 students. I just took the 549 divided by 3. And then high school, there's 642 students, which is about 160. So the thing that, from a planning standpoint, that if you're seeing a lot of elementary and preschool, then you know that your numbers are going to go over the next 10 years. You're actually seeing your bump is in the middle school, so just kind of be aware of that. You're probably going to see as these kids graduate, you're going to see a decrease in overall enrollment over the next 8 to 10 years, based on obviously a lot of that can change if you develop the town and you have new growth and so forth, but that's always helpful to kind of see where the school-age children population is going. And you can kind of see that the next 2 pages over, which is says FY20, Chapter 70 apportionment of local contribution. East Bridgewater went from, these are kids in pre-K through 12 that attend East Bridgewater Public Schools, went from 2,189 down to 2,159, 30 less students. Again, in that you can see that from that previous chart that shows that there's a declining enrollment, and then Southeastern went from 79 to 78, a -1. So there's 31 less students. When that happens, what the state says you can still afford what you can afford. So you would think there's less students, your budget goes down. It doesn't, because under the formula, you can still your per pupil costs go up basically, because they say you can still afford this. There's less kids, so we don't have to give you as much state aid. It's
More
not
on the
necessarily a fair
towns.
formula,
Yeah.
but that's how it is. So that's, again, I went a little fast, but that's kind of overall where we're at. Bottom line, it's up, was it just over $19,000 over the previous year, $19,503. So I can talk about the budget, I can talk about the school, answer any of your questions.
Questions?
I think when we were trying to predict this back in January, I think we had predicted a lot more than that. The 19,000 increase, I think we were up around 30 for some reason.
Yeah.
So, it looks good.
Yeah.
compared to what we thought. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, we'd like to, hopefully, one of the things that the committee has been really aggressively is fighting for that reimbursement for transportation, because that's the one thing that we can control. Everything else is pretty much out of our control, but, so hopefully next year.
And you got, in, the school runs their own bus service, right?
We do,
Yeah.
we do, yeah. And I'll tell you, that's the business to get into. It is tough to find bus drivers. We're always looking for them. We're always looking for
I
them.
don't know, I see one every day.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
My husband drives us.
Oh, does he? Yeah, I'll tell you, it's, you know, we actually have to sub some of our runs out because we don't have enough drivers. Yeah.
Do you have an application for Bill?
Yeah, any day.
I'll do the EV.
We even have health
You
insurance.
got a big enough car now, you just
Uh,
drive around.
Just us and the truck.
One of the things I didn't, I know you have a busy agenda, I didn't focus on in terms of just budget, busters are usually health insurance and salaries and so forth. We were able to do a 0% increase in
Wow.
health insurance.
That's
We're
incredible.
actually going, this is the second year we've been able to do that. We're actually going self-insured next year. And we anticipate we're going to build up about $500,000 in the reserve fund. So hopefully that'll help keep that budget in line.
Excellent.
Great.
We appreciate everything you people do down there. When you bring your budgets in, they're very easy to read and follow. You guys do a tremendous job.
So with the net school spending, is that reference to the foundation budget? Is that, I mean, are you, that's the same?
Yeah. So basically, if you see that on that first page, that 26,660,198, that's the minimum by law for the 1,531 students that attend Southeastern.
Yeah.
That the 9 communities have to spend. Out of that, 16,745 comes from state aid, and the other 9,789,477 comes from local assessments. So the school committee could essentially ask for more, but they can't ask for less.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the, what's it come out to for the per pupil expenditure?
It's like 9,000.
Yeah, that's that page with all the charts there. And I'd have to add those quickly, but if I look at East Bridgewater, 327 is capital, 359 for transportation per student, and 9,196 for in terms of for operating budget, and then you get 8,229 in state aid per student. So is it about 19,000? I'm thinking. I think it's pretty close. I don't have a calculator with me. I had that somewhere.
17.4, all right.
Is that where it is?
17.4.
Great.
Wasn't quite as high as I thought.
Now, I mean, I know, you know, both tech schools have changed since I was in high school. I mean, do you find more of your students are learning a trade than going on to college, or are they jumping right?
It's
into
it's
trades,
about
or-
62 to 65% going on to higher education. You know, there's some technical schools there and so forth. You know, I think it's part of the industry is that a lot of these even technical jobs require some kind of, at least an associate's degree and so forth. So they graduate, you know, being able to do both. We actually have a program in place that we're piloting with our sophomores, which with Massasoit, where they'll be able to graduate with an associate's degree the day after they get the high school diploma. So that'll help a lot of kids.
Wow.
You know,
Great.
you know,
Yeah.
and try to, as you may know, college debt is second highest in the country,
outrageous.
second only to mortgages, and so the Massachusetts is the fifth highest. Mortgage college debt among students in Massachusetts is the fifth highest in the country. So anything we can do to kind of reduce that for the families is what we try to do.
So are they taking classes at Massasoit in the evening?
So,
or-
yeah, so they take classes at our school at 2:30, and then junior and senior year, they can actually do a dual enrollment, early college, high school. We applied for a grant.
Wow.
They'll be able to take, do most of their academics right at the Massasoit campus, and then do their vocational programming at Southeastern.
Oh, great.
Yeah, yeah.
Great program.
What a great
And they'll be
program.
actually be able to enroll, they'll be through the state, 2+2 agrees, they'll be able to enroll like at a Bridgewater as a junior, or UMass Dartmouth, or UMass Amherst, or so forth. So,
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Every course in shop is still all STEM related, like every school is, science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's an amazing process. But it's involved in everything, whether it's a shop course or an academic course.
Excellent.
Great. Anything else?
No, thank you very much for a
Thank
good
you.
Thank you.
presentation.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
I don't know if I should leave some of these for the FinCom, or do they have
Sure.
them?
I can get
I'll
them.
just leave it. We just go away.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
See you, Joe.
We'll move on to 6:45. Alan Gould from Municipal
It's
Resources.
Stephen Rollins.
Oh, okay. Stephen? Come on up. How you doing? It's just a
Hello.
public
Nice to meet
presentation.
you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, yeah, nice seeing you.
I noticed this room swallows up sound pretty badly. And I'm a rather soft-spoken person. I used to be a disc jockey. I used to try to
you.
imitate George Carlin.
Thank you.
I know who he was.
Just so the folks at home here, you might want to just pull the microphone closer.
Don't touch the mic, Zach. We'll.
Is that good? Okay. All right.
Well, that ruined my voice, so just, I'll look to the chair to give me a little signal once in a while. But, I guess we're just here to introduce ourselves as a firm, and go light on that. Did they get the information that I sent down? So we decided to give you a little information, that had general information and some dollar information, so you could really get a feel for how we approach it. And, we're a large enough firm to sustain a staff. And that's really important. And I was thinking, how did I want to talk about MRI? And I said, maybe I'll just tell them the story about how I got involved in MRI. And when I retired from Hanover after 25 years, we hired a firm to replace me. And it was one of these things, you look for the proposal and you, if possible, you go with the low bid, and you look for the qualifications. And we found that, pretty soon the staff was making phone calls for the firm, and pretty soon they were writing letters for the firm, and it was so frustrating. And then we got to the background checks, and I was not satisfied. I ended up doing the background checks on the finalists, and I was just so frustrated. And that firm just did not have the horses behind them to do the work. And I'm a third generation public servant, and I still have that pride, and I just have that intensity of feeling that the managers should be quality people, and they should have, a certain standard and ethical and integrity and all that stuff, just all that stuff. Don't let me get intense on you. And so I decided I'd like to work for one of these firms and screen out those big talkers. I just didn't care for those folks that just come in and talk big, and 3 years later they're gone and they haven't done a thing for a community. They need to contribute. And I started looking at the firms. And I remembered MRI, and I remembered all the firms, but I kind of thought I'd like to check out MRI more. And the head of the firm, Alan, is a former manager, but he's also a former police chief. And they really do background checks. That's what really attracted me. They know how to dig in, and Alan really knows how to find out the real stuff. And I was going, I'm really impressed. And so I ended up joining them. And I've never regretted. I've been with them since 2012. I've worked on over 20 community projects of different sorts. And now I'm in the phase where I only do one town at a time. So if I end up with you, you'll be my only town I'm working on. I find that works better for me, certainly works better for the town. It's a dedicated type of thing. And you can see what we do. Alan has, well, it was even prior to Alan, they have what they call the whole ball of wax, which is really the top of the line, if you will, approach, where it just involves everything. If the town needs everyone in the town involved, type of thing. Cambridge. the Empire of Cambridge.
The People's Republic of Cambridge, is that the?
Thank you for helping me out with that. That is, every neighborhood watch is involved. And, you know, and if a town doesn't need that, you know, if the select board knows what they represent and what they're doing, and they feel confident in going forward without that type of involvement, and it's their job to pick the administrator they're gonna work with, and then they don't need to do that, then that's the total other end of it. And the money represents exactly that. If you saw the two figures, that's the type of approach. And I remember talking to Alan, and I'm saying, you know, that number, that low number, is that real? You know, do we do much of that stuff? Because I had not done one of those. I'd never really ended up with a community that did one of those. He says, yeah, we do a lot in New Hampshire. I said, why not in Massachusetts? And this is my thought drift as I ended up coming down to East Bridgewater. And I was thinking, well, you know, if the community is concerned about the finances and that's the type of thing, I realized there's no better way to leverage all the resources of MRI than to go with that approach, because you end up getting everything that we do. And look at all the things that we do. I mean, we talk your ears off in the beginning by phone or whatever. I spend a lot of time with selectmen. I talk with you again and again until I really have a feel for what you think about the future of the town. And when I get that picture starting to form as an entity in my mind, or if it's Bob doing it or whoever's doing it, then we start getting a profile of the town, and then we start getting a feel for the type of person that's going to fit that. And that's when it really starts happening. Profile gets written, then the advertisement gets written, and then there's a 30-day wait period while you're waiting for applications. But meanwhile, there's other stuff going on. And you're looking through the whole thing, and you're building essay questions off of that profile, all going back to the conversations. And as you go along and you're maturing, you're looking at all the resumes, and you're saying, okay, do they want the low-key person or not? They want these qualifications. Now, you've got things that speak well for you. You've got a long-term administrative function here in town. You've had a long-term administrator, that speaks well for you. But you also have it embedded in your personnel bylaw. You know, it's embedded in your capital improvement. It's embedded. This is a function that's part of your process. And so candidates like to see things like that. These are things that we can point out to candidates. And then the two things that I really like to say about MRI is the ability of MRI to come up with candidates that fit you, in addition to candidates that respond to your advertisements, is impressive. I had no idea. It's the inner sanctum stuff, you know, get through the curtains and then you find out. I was just looking at the spreadsheets that they had the other day, because in preparing to come down here. And they keep track of over 1,600 people. It's a huge number of people. Now, these aren't all matches to every town, but it's just impressive. It goes back years. And, you know, I'm just finishing up Berlin now, and we pulled probably 6 or 7 candidates into that pool because they would fit. And we brought them through the process to see what they were. And that's addition to what they would have got otherwise. And that's a pretty good number, because you're only looking for one. And these aren't people that just applied over the internet. These are people that are already pretty good matches to begin with. So they're quality people. And no one can match that type of resource. So, and then we have the staff to back it all up. And then, like I said, the other thing that's always impressed me is the background researches we do. So we're digging back. At first, it's a web research, and we're going back years and years and years. And we, on the phone interviews and the essay questions that trigger all these things, and the exercises, we intentionally choose ethical exercises because we know we're going somewhere with a candidate to find out what their experiences are so we can ask more questions. But we're finding out things, and we're asking questions. What happened then? But it's not so much what happened then, and how did you move on? How did you interact with your selectmen? When did you interact with your selectmen? How did that relationship work? And then we learn, will they fit East Bridgewater? Because we've already talked with you. We hear how you want to be interacted with. You know, do you want your administrator to have set the stage with the finance committee and all that sort of thing first before they come? Or do you want it all talked through with you first and then go out and meet with the committees? You know, you have your way of doing things. And, you know, what is the style of the administrator? So we try to match all those things up. And then we move along, and then you're going to tell us what you want. Do you want a professional team of managers interviewing these people and a local committee, a search committee of some sort that you decide what you want, interviewing those people and marching towards the final point where they meet with you? So it's kind of our process and sort of a folksy sort of way of telling you. That's where we go.
Most of the towns or cities you've worked with, do they always set up a subcommittee to interview, or do you find it's more the selectmen doing it, or what?
It's mostly there's a search committee of some sort. A few years ago, it always used to be a professional group. They always kind of wanted someone else to tear the candidate apart first, and then they'd take over,
Yeah.
depending whether and that's become less often. So maybe as I sit here with you, it would help for me to know whether you're interested in the professional panel, which would usually be like, say, a school superintendent, a manager, or maybe two managers, or if you had some interest in a police chief or someone else, all from outside the community, being a panel because you want to, you know, touch on certain issues with candidates. I mean, you may have engineering projects that are coming up. We would put an engineering person on the panel. You know, we'd focus on something. But if you didn't want that type of thing, then we would adjust the price accordingly. So when we came back with a formal proposal, I mean, you're not really, as I understand it, quite at the stage where you'd be identifying a preferred vendor anyway, and then you'd go on to negotiate with someone. But when you get to that stage, you know, that's the stage I'm talking about now.
Right.
We would be adjusting prices according to what you would want. But you've got the wide range,
Yeah.
and I've given you that. So I'm curious about you folks. What do you think you want? Or where do you think you're going?
I think we're so early on into
We're
this.
working on that,
Get back to you later.
yeah.
You mentioned that you have this pool of people that, you know, you guys have as contacts that you can sort of look at and see who might be a good fit, but these are people that are presumably in jobs that they're maybe happy with. Like, what's the odds of those people that you just call and say, hey, I think you should apply for this job in East Bridgewater? Are these people that are likely to actually want to change jobs?
Well, I got to be careful here. I was quick to reduce that number down to 5 or 6.
Okay.
You didn't notice how I
Yep.
did that? But you need a big pool to get down.
Right,
to the-
sure.
At a community not so far from you, there was a candidate that applied a few years ago and wasn't quite ready, but had relatives in this area. And of course, immediately they went on our list, right? But we knew who he was. And then another opportunity came up a few years later. We checked him out, and he'd done the right things he'd moved on to another position, got the right experience, and been tested. And then we knew, and had been through a difficult situation, and we knew exactly what we needed to know. And that made that person the right candidate for that next position. It was perfect. It really was just like, oh, wow, this really works. And, you know, there you go. That's a perfect example of how
And that, I
keeping
mean, and
track
you would
of-
consider that somebody who maybe wouldn't have just seen an ad and applied, like that's someone that you reached out to and
You-
said, I
you reach
think
out
you
to
should
those
apply for this job, and
Yeah.
that worked out, and you find that works well.
Because we knew there was a motivation there to begin with. We knew that person wanted to come to the South Shore. I've got to tell you, I don't know if you know this already, but South Shore is not a destination for a lot of these people.
I'm shocked.
I was cruel, and you took it very well.
Excluding East Bridgewater.
We have so much to offer.
You know, I don't know what people are telling you, but my thought is that you're in the 20-odd candidate range for applicants. maybe MRI can boost it up a little bit. But, you know, that's probably where you are. Where I'm working now, and I'm finishing up, you know, in the next week or two, we had an extraordinary response. Even I didn't have any idea we were going to be so lucky, but yeah. Well, you know, I worked on the South Shore. I know. There's two roads. There's 24. There's 3. Those are the ones that come south. You know, that's it. It's just you got to get a certain type of candidate, and you know, you remember. I do. I remember something like, oh, that person's got relatives down here. Ooh, I'm not going to forget that. And so that's why I was looking at the list. That's why I was looking at it, because I knew I was coming down here, and I was thinking, you know, are we going to be able to tap a few shoulders? And
Yep.
You got to catch
Okay.
people at the right time in their career.
Yeah. Thank you.
When you do, and I'm glad to hear the extensive background checks on all the candidates, would a part of that be how many positions they may have applied for over the last, say, 5 years, to see if they are just applying for every possible job that shows up, or what that situation would be? Is that a part of your background check?
Absolutely. We not only know how many jobs they've applied for, if they did it through us, we know at what point they were either cut or they made it through. You know, so were they cut after resume check, after essay check, after question and answer on the phone check, after the search committee check, or after selectman point? So there's a lot of points at which they may make it through, and then a commentary as to why. And then we've got color coding, and if it's red, that means some devastating newspaper article came out and they did not do well. And that candidate goes no further, so unfortunately, you can't count all those candidates on that list, because they don't go anywhere anymore.
Okay,
And
great.
That's why I'm real happy to be with MRI, because they do have a red.
And
you.
once we reach the point of getting to final, say, 3 candidates for
Yeah.
your firm,
Yes.
what if we have no consensus on any of them? We just start over, or like, would we be paying that fee again? Just,
Well, I don't know why you folks like to ask that question, but I do have an answer for it.
Oh, it must be a good question.
Only once has it failed. I mean, that's the amount of confidence I want to first present to you. And I hope I've just done that successfully. I mean, we're trying to bring matches to you because we are looking for success for multiple years. And no, we don't go back to that list again in East Bridgewater to tap them on the shoulder. We want a long-term successful relationship. But we did have one town that just got focused on one candidate, and we couldn't shake them, and we kept saying, no, you cannot focus on one candidate, because, you know, what if you lose that one candidate, and then everything can come falling down like a house of cards, the other one might withdraw, you know, because the candidates can feel that. And there's a sense of momentum towards the end, and things have to close. It's the only point in the process where things have to go fairly quickly, because names are out, becomes public.
Yeah.
It all just has to come together fairly quickly. And that town just was focused on that one, and guess what happened? A withdrawal. And they wouldn't bring forward 4 candidates. We just felt uneasy about 2 of them. 1 withdrew, and the other 2 withdrew, and there was just 1 left. We had to start all over again.
Ugh.
And no, we didn't charge a penny for it. I volunteered my time, but the firm just said, no, we'll do it all over again from advertising on.
Wow.
And we did. Completely, no, I wouldn't say a completely new pool, but in terms of finalists, it was a completely new pool. And of course, the town was thrilled. I mean, I'll be glad to put them on the reference list, because they can't say enough good things about us, because we bent over backwards to make sure they were happy. But that's how rare it is. I mean, we've done, I don't know how many we've done at this point, but we've done a lot. And, you know, we have, you know, we do have a large size firm where we're supporting a number of professionals, and I deal with Elizabeth and Christian and Alan, and then we've, you know, some of the managers, Bob Mercier, and they've been around in Massachusetts for years, and
No, I was
Oh,
just
very
wondering, 'cause
professional.
I know years ago with the search for the superintendent,
Yeah.
they went through all the interviews and, you know, got down to a few candidates and didn't reach a consensus and kind of had to, you know, start over. So I was just, you know, wondering what the process was here if that happens.
That's because they had an odd number of people on the board.
True, but, you know, but
Well, if you did the comprehensive one, that's the everything, and you're coming through a citizen search committee, I can't imagine that it's not something compatible there. And if you did the minimal one, there's gonna be phone calls between me and you folks. There's not someone coming forward that you don't know about before they get here. You're gonna know everything we know about the candidates by the time they get here. But you're gonna, I have trouble imagining that we're gonna bring forward candidates you're not interested in.
yeah, I just wanted to
Yeah,
check it.
No,
we've
in
learned
the,
too,
in the course of
yes.
following through at the end and we're down to the final three, based on your experience throughout the state, do you do anything as far as recommendation of a salary?
We'll kick in, it's right in the papers, we'll kick in and assist you in whatever you want. We'll help negotiate the contract, the details of the contract, whatever you want.
Okay.
Yep, yep, because, you know, we do salary surveys all the time,
Okay.
and that's all part of what we do, so we're current on all that stuff.
Okay.
I appreciated what you said about that it could be an entire family coming to a community, and
Oh, you saw that?
yeah,
It's
that
true.
was an excellent point.
In this case, for the South Shore, it is true.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah, I remember when I came down and with my family and looked at a whole bunch of places. I didn't end up moving here. I can't believe it. I thought I was gonna sell in Metro West and come to South Shore and come to a mansion, sell high, buy low, the whole thing. Didn't quite work out that way. All the same. Well, how have we done?
Very good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
appreciate your time, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Rebecca, you all set?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll give you a little folder so you've got that. All right, thanks. Now you've got to do the same thing again and again.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, appreciate
Thank you very
it.
much.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen.
And I think just to be fair to the other firms, you know, I know we did it with the search firm for the police chief, try and ask the same questions of
Yeah.
each firm,
Right.
you know, as we go along. Who do we have next? Bernard Lynch from Community.
And there he is.
Bernard,
Heard him.
how you doing? Come on up.
Well, nice meeting you, Benny.
Meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Carol Julius, nice to meet you.
Sorry, John.
Oh, wait.
Hey, John, nice meeting you.
Nice to see you. We thought we'd give Steve his.
Yeah. You must all know each other.
We do.
All friends, you know, so.
It's too bad we just can't take the same car everywhere. We make things a lot easier for us. Well, thank you for having us here tonight. How would you like us to proceed? Just sort of,
Jump right into
Jump
what
right
you think
in.
the process is,
Okay.
how it would proceed with your firm, and, you know, near the end, we'll ask a few questions.
sure,
You know,
okay, great. Well, let me tell you just a little bit about, and I think it's probably in the materials we sent you, just a little bit about who Community Paradigm is. As I said, my name is Bernie Lynch. I'm 35-plus years in municipal government, working with or for municipal governments. I was the town manager of Chelmsford for 20 years. I was the first town manager for that town. And then I needed a little bit more of a challenge, and I became the city manager of Lowell. I got a challenge. So I did that
Yes,
for
you
about
did.
8 years. And about 5 years ago, I decided that I wanted to do a few different things. And so I started this business, hoping to work for and with municipalities, and on public management work, recruiting, and then do some teaching, which I'm doing at Suffolk University, most closely tied with the MMA, Suffolk University Local Government Certificate Program, sort of building the new generation of managers. It was roughly 4 years ago that we did our first recruitment. for the town of Winchendon, and then we became very busy over the last 4 years, just a little bit under 4 years. We've done, either completed or in the midst of completing, 31 recruitments for town administrator, town managers, which I think makes us the most active recruiting firm in the Commonwealth over that period of time. And we've also filled a number of other positions. Most recently, we completed several recruitments in this area. We just wrapped up Rockland last week. We did Lakeville a couple weeks before that. We've done Avon. We did Stoughton. We've worked in some challenging communities, certainly, in terms of filling positions. But I have with me John Petrin. I'll let John walk you through his background a little bit. But essentially, we have a number of people that work on these projects. I work on all of the recruitments. John is recently retired from his position as town manager of Burlington, Massachusetts. But John?
Thank you, Coach. So, John Petrin, so I've been 40 years in the business, municipal government, and I've been in a couple of governments, a little bit more than Bernie. So I started in the town of Pepperell, but I was in the town of Harvard for 13 years, did the whole Devens project. While I was there, the closure of Fort Devens, becoming Devens the economic development area. And then I went on, became an assistant superintendent of schools for the city of Marlborough for a little bit, and then town manager in Ashland, and retiring out of Burlington as town administrator there. So varied background with all those positions. I think Bernie and I are both known within the industry. We've both been very active in the industry, so he can talk about his Suffolk ties. And I can talk about municipal managers' ties. So I'm the co-founder of the Managers Boot Camp. So we run that every year, and Jeff Nutting out of Franklin and myself started it. And so we work with all the young managers coming in, and department heads who want to be managers. So I think between the two of us, we have a pretty good network of folks. So I retired 2 months ago. I'm doing an interim stint in Wenham a couple of days a week.
You know what interims do.
A lot of that going around.
We've heard.
Exactly, so doing a little bit of that. Like I said, I've been in business 40 years, graduate of Stonehill College, got my political science degree there, and my master's out of Northeastern University, but been very active, former president of the Massachusetts Municipal Association and the Managers Association. So again, I think we bring a lot of background in knowing people, and that piece. And then Sharon Flaherty with the firm is a communications expert. So she really does a lot of our writing and puts together things. I'm not sure we can write, but she's great on the back
She
side.
checks all your emails.
She checks
right?
all that. And, you know us managers, so we can talk, but we need someone to to write for us. So she does a lot of the communications for us, and is has her expertise in journalism and marketing, and she brings that to across the team here.
Yeah. Tonight, Sharon will be with us, but she's out in Palmer tonight. They're doing the finalist interviews out there for the 8 managers. So I chose East Bridgewater, and she's
Closer to home, right?
that might be one reason. So she's out there. But as John said, she comes with the journalism experience covering municipal governments, and the profile that you see there for the town of Rockland was her work. She comes in, meets with the department heads, meets with the public, and pulls together the information. And maybe that's a good launching point to talk a little bit about our process. Our process is probably very similar to what you've heard from other firms. But what we do is we come in, and I think this is significant, we come in and we learn about the town. In the case of East Bridgewater, it will be our goal to do that over the course of the next 2 to 3 weeks. If you were to select Community Paradigm, we would come in, meet with department heads, meet with you as members of the board. We would, if you wished, conduct a community forum. That's something that we've done on every single search that we've done. We think citizen engagement can be a very important part of this process. And so I'm happy to see that that's being done. And many more of the searches now, but it was something that we think we sort of kicked off here in the Commonwealth. With that information, we compile the position profile that you see a sample of in the packet. We use that to market the position. We think it's a great tool for us to talk about the town of East Bridgewater, the issues facing the town of East Bridgewater, and the type of person you want to choose as your next town administrator. We also think it's a very important tool for the community to go through the process. You've had the same town administrator here in town for a number of years. It's probably been a while since someone has stepped back and said, okay, what are we really looking for? Times change, people change, issues change. So we like to sort of use the process to develop that as also a process to help the community identify what its needs are.
Almost like a mini strategic plan as a
Exactly.
jumping off point.
Exactly.
I like that.
And I think that Sharon puts a lot of work into that. That is one of the most robust position profiles that you will find out there in the marketplace, filled with hyperlinks that guide people to the information about the town. And then we use the network that we have. We go out, we make calls. We've been in the business for a long time. We know a lot of people. We know pretty much all the managers in the state, unless they're people who never leave their town and get involved. But even those people, most of us know somehow, or know people that know them. We know a number of new young managers. Again, I'll use Rockland as the example of this. We were able to tap into a manager or an assistant manager from Sandwich, and hit him and say, look, here's a position, here's an opportunity. And he's now going to be starting there. I think they're going to hammer out the contract in the next day or so, and he'll be starting in July. So we know the younger managers, we know all of the managers, we know department heads that are interested. With the level of activity that we've had, we get calls on a regular basis, people that want to get into the business. And so we try to tie all of that together. We certainly continue to circulate we advertise the position beyond just our network. We advertise the position in the MMA, the International City and County Managers Association. So we cast a wide net out there. We don't say that that we have to go to Texas to find someone, but there may be someone in Texas that used to live near East Bridgewater or in East Bridgewater that might be interested in the position. So we want to make sure that we get those people and give them an opportunity and give you an opportunity to see those people. So that would be the process that we would use with the profile, with the ads, getting applicants, bring them in. We do occasionally work without a screening committee, but again, a screening committee is a great way to involve the citizens in helping narrow the field down. So the goal would be that you would appoint a screening committee, or the thought would be you'd appoint a screening committee, and they would have the goal of taking the applications that we receive, and I would guess that we probably have 30 to 40 applications for the position. Probably a dozen or thereabouts would be qualified, truly qualified. There might be some out-of-the-box people that go beyond that, but the committee would narrow the field down to 7 or 8 that they would interview, and then pass 3 people on to you. We work with the screening committee to help them evaluate, develop questions, different means of determining who the best candidates are that meet the profile requirements. And then we work to check the references, make sure that they are the right people for the job, what their attributes are, and then we work with the board to help you make that determination as well. So we go from soup to nuts all the way through. We have a standard sort of process that we use, but we also customize to meet the requirements of the town. So we're more than happy to try to work to make sure that you're comfortable, that you're happy with the selection that's made.
And how has it worked with the screening committees over the years? I mean, positive, negatives, your thoughts? I mean, does it?
Yeah, I think it's positive. I think it's been positive.
Yeah.
The one thing that's always important during the screening process is that people have to understand that the people that apply for the position are doing so confidentially. So that's something we have to hammer home. If we're going to get the best pool of candidates for the town, we have to make sure that that confidentiality is protected. So we work with the screening committee right up at the front end to let them know that that's crucial. But they bring a different perspective. You can, again, town of Avon, we did it without a screening committee. Lakeville, we did it without a screening committee. But most of the communities, I would say, use a screening
They do,
committee
okay.
as a process. And it has been effective.
Yeah.
Just make sure they understand their charge. So, making sure the communication of what you're seeking from the screening committee, that they're to provide names, finalists, without necessarily ranking them, if that's what you want, is key. So as long as you identify that, I just served as chairman of a screening committee in my own community, where I live, for a fire chief's position, and it worked very well, from that. So I was, chairing the committee. I wasn't involved with the search.
Yeah.
I just did it as a citizen, and I think the selectmen, saw that positive, and it takes some meeting nights away from you, in doing that as well. But again, make sure your charge is understood.
And would you give us advice on, selecting those people, how to
Sure.
sort of put together a committee that's diverse and represents the town and isn't just the same old people that volunteer and get involved?
Well,
but,
right.
Community stakeholders, but not, you know what I mean? It seems like it's
Fresh
always the same
faces.
people, and while that's good with experience, sometimes you need new,
Absolutely.
or,
Yeah, and,
people in the
I-
community to get involved.
Right.
And buy
that-
into it.
That was something over in Rockland, just for an example. They did an excellent job sort of melding together people that were very established in the community with some brand-new people who had recently moved into the town within the last 5 years. And sort of mixed it together so that they're different perspective. And again, we train, if you will, the committee. We work with them. As I sometimes say, we sort of speak, we have sort of the manager whisperers. Managers have their own, as we all, in whatever occupation, profession we're in, we all have our own lingo. And managers hear things from screening committee members or from the board or from reading about the town, and they don't necessarily understand what it all means. We try to interpret for the candidates. Then the candidates will speak in their interviews, and they'll say things that, or have questions that screening committee members or the board may not quite be clear on why they're asking that question or what that issue's all about. We can be that go-between. One of the benefits really that I think a recruiting firm provides is there are questions that candidates are going to have about East Bridgewater and about your general operations that they're going to be hesitant to call you.
Sure.
They will not be hesitant to call us, and we can give them the answer and explain the situation. And of course, our goal is to get you the best candidates. You are our clients.
So the towns that have used the committees, are they usually made up of department heads, police chiefs, superintendents?
It's a mix. It's a mix.
Yeah.
Some have had, it works to have a department head on, to give that perspective. It's helpful to have a business person, maybe a former official. I can give you, if you were to choose us, we'd work with you on that.
To help select a
Yes.
good group.
New citizens or established citizens, officials, department heads. I think the diversity is good. The other thing that's very important is that it be a manageable size.
That was my next question. What do you consider a reasonable amount on the search committee?
5 to 7 is my preference. I've had them as small as 3, and that's fine, but it's tough to narrow it down that much. When you get to numbers like 9, 11.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of
that's
people
been much.
to organize. And you're coming up to the summer, and this work will probably take place. My thought with the schedule is it would probably have these interviews taking place last part of June into early July, and then have the finalists before the board in late July, early August. So
The other consideration is select a chair, someone who has understanding of how this works in the public setting, can conduct a meeting and pull everybody together. So I think places, people who maybe currently serve on a committee, finance committee, something of that nature, who can pull a meeting together, and a moderator. We're working in another community right now where the moderator is the chair of the screening committee, and so that person kind of knows everybody and knows how to bring people together and move the meeting along.
It really, every community is different though, and we would work with the board to identify that.
And at the end of all this, if, just trying to ask the same questions of each firm.
Sure.
If we don't reach a consensus, if we don't agree with the final three.
You're really worried
I
about
didn't
this.
know, just, I mean.
Oh,
just
you'll
start on
be
full next
fine.
door.
Yeah.
I mean, we're starting from square one, or we go with the next group?
No.
I mean, how?
Well, we would evaluate that. If you, in all of the searches we've done, there's only been, I think, 2 occasions that we've had to sort of go back out. One was a breakdown with the negotiations with the selected candidate. We had to go back out. We actually had a stronger field the second time in that one particular community. Another community that we had, the problem was that the variety of issues, but the initial salary that was put out was far too low, and that had to be adjusted.
That was one of the questions that I had. Do you give us some input on what you think is a reasonable amount to put out there for a starting salary?
Yes.
Based on the fact that we, again, it's been 30 years.
We would utilize salary data from the region to work with you on that.
Great.
Okay.
Right. In this particular community that will remain nameless, they didn't listen to our
Okay.
advice right off the bat. And interestingly, when they finally did make a selection, they went right up to the number we told them to.
Wasted everybody's time and then got it right in the end, right?
Right.
Most of these positions, once they reach contract stage, are they usually 3-year contracts, 1-year vetting contract, or, I mean, if they're coming from another town, I mean, I'm sure
Most
they
of-
want some stability.
Most
so-
are 3-year contracts.
Right.
Right. Yeah, there's, some towns do some different things, but most are 3-year contracts.
Okay.
Right.
So when you recruit people, because I know that you guys have done a ton of this, and I know some of these people on your list. I work for the town of Carver, so
Okay,
I'm
okay.
familiar with the process, haven't gone through it there recently. But
Right.
how do you sort of ensure that the people that you tap maybe to say, hey, come apply for a job in East Bridgewater, that it might actually be someone who's really interested in making a move to a new job and not just somebody who's, oh, well, it's good experience to have an interview? How do you identify those people?
Right. Through discussions with them that they're serious candidates.
Yeah.
Right. I would say this, though, that sometimes if they're on the fence, it could be just some uncertainty about making a move. But once they begin the process, they get excited by the opportunity to move on. There are a number of managers that
Interesting, yeah.
have been sort of reluctant to make the move, but once they're in,
They become vested in
they
the
become
process.
very vested
And
in the
it's
process.
very difficult for us as managers, if we're applying into a community and it's leaked out there, or we become a
Sure.
finalist,
Right.
to go
Yeah.
back to the community you're in.
Yeah.
Public sector.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So everything is known after a while.
Right.
So managers are hesitant, they usually,
That makes sense.
making sure that it's the right step to step forward. And that's where we come in to have those conversations. And I remember taking a job once, they went 9 months before they filled the position. They couldn't get anybody to come in. It was a recruiter, who basically had to have the discussion to make sure that the candidates knew that the town was actually serious about being successful. The one thing we want as candidates coming in is to know that there's an opportunity for success for the candidate and for the town. So it has to be a good fit that way.
Thank you.
When you do your background checks, you have a list of all the people that have been applying for all these administrator and manager jobs over the last 4 or 5 years? And is it just because a job shows up, they apply automatically for it? Do we know how many have gone on 5 interviews and they're still out there looking for a job, and why?
Yes. Short answer, yes. There are people that we will see that apply to every position that's out there. And generally speaking, those people don't go far in the process.
In most of those situations, do you have some kind of background that's going to tell you why?
In many cases, yes. Probably in most cases, yes.
Yep.
You know, having
If
said
not,
that-
you'll find it.
Exactly. Yeah. Having said that, though, there are occasionally people who apply for a number of jobs or become a finalist at a number. They may not apply to everything, but they become a finalist, and it's just, as John said, it's getting that right fit.
Right.
Not a good fit.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they're a bad candidate.
Exactly.
Not a good fit.
So I would hesitate to say that if someone has applied in a number of locations over the last 4 or 5 years and haven't been chosen, that they are necessarily bad candidate. There are some. Most of the people, though, that I'm speaking of that have applied to everything, you never see their names.
Okay, thank you.
Emails right out.
Right.
That's the answer we needed.
That's the role we
Right.
play. Again, knowing the people in this business, having been as involved as we have over the years, we usually know the background.
Right.
You know, or why a person. We know, by seeing a manager so often, at meetings and so on, we can understand sometimes why they're not chosen, in another place. And I think, that's for us to sift through that.
Right.
Yeah, we sift through it, and I think it's important too to point out that when we meet with the screening committee, we give them all of the resumes. They see everything. And there will be candidates that, and essentially what we do is we break them down into different tiers. Tier 1, qualified. They meet the qualifications. Tier 2, they've got some interesting experiences. They might have worked in another position somewhere, but they don't quite meet the experience requirement, perhaps. But there's something else that they might be able to bring to the table. So they might be worth looking at, depending upon what happens with Tier 1. And then you have your Tier 3 candidates that they're just not qualified. They don't meet the minimum qualifications. They don't even come really close to that. So what will often happen is when we show the fully qualified candidates, there may be backstories to some of those candidates that we will alert the screening committee of that. So, and they'll have to make that decision as to what to do, but we alert them to that.
Great.
Good.
Yeah, and then when it comes to the the background checks that we do, the process that we use is after the screening committee makes their selection of the final the three finalists that move on, we don't bring them, if they meet on a Friday, we don't show up on that Monday to the board and say, okay, these are the finalists. We do the reference checks at that point. We talk to the communities where they've worked. We talk to people that they give us as references. We talk to people that we know in the business to get a feel for what their story is all about. We do a query check to make sure that they've got a clean criminal history. There's degrees of that we basically included within that fee, the standard query check. But we use a firm out of Mansfield, Creative Services, that can do extensive background checks for us. And we can check on education, we do that. And then we compile a report that we give to you. Now we're restricted as to some of the criminal history materials that we can hand out, but we can tell you if they're clear. And then, with the information we receive from the references, we give you, and I'd be happy to show you one of these if you'd like, but we give you a report that gives you their cover letter, the resume, and a compilation of the comments that we've received. Because it's a public document, we try to put it in a somewhat neutral terms. But what people see is the strengths, what people might see is the weaknesses. We don't play up the weaknesses, but it's there between the lines, and we make ourselves available for individual consultations with each member of the board. So that if you have questions or you want to talk about any of these people, we do full Google searches on everyone. And you'd be shocked at what you might find. And we do social media searches. Sharon does all of that work as well. So we go on Facebook, LinkedIn, check out their posts and
Good.
flag
Great.
it.
All right, any other questions?
No, I'm good.
No,
All right,
thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right,
Very much.
thank you.
And you'll be
And,
dealing with us on this, so we will be the faces with Sharon.
You're the
You'll be,
team.
So-
you'll be tired of us at the
So,
end.
Yep, so.
So, all right. And one thing I would certainly urge you, if you, depending upon how you plan to do this, if you want to call any of our references, any of them, we don't just give you 3 or 4, we give you everyone that we've.
Quite a list.
completed. And you feel free to call any of them. All right?
Okay,
Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thanks a
much.
lot.
Thank you.
John, thank you.
I'm the library director.
Oh, excellent.
It's been there 20 years.
Very good.
Bye, have a good night. You'll have to recruit when I leave, because
I'll give you a business card.
I'll tell Michael.
Tell my cousin.
I will.
Next on the agenda is Bob Lynch and Mary Flanders from the Edward Collins Center for Public Management.
Mary Flanders, a carry.
The carry, sorry.
Mary, it's a Cardi.
The carry.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Hey, Carol Julius. Nice to meet you.
How you doing? Nice to meet you, Bill Bauer.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Right here?
Yes. If you just want to introduce yourself and.
Sure. I'll begin by sending Mary Icardi's apologies. She had a previous commitment with the town of Randolph this evening, and in the process, actually, of going through screening results and preliminary resumes. But my name, for the record, is Robert Halpin. I'm a senior associate at the Edward Collins Center for Public Management. I have a 40-year history in Massachusetts, 30 years as a town manager or town administrator in 3 different communities over the course of about 30 years. I worked for about 10 years in a regional economic development setting with the communities of Lowell, Lawrence, Haverhill, and their surrounding suburbs on a common economic development strategy. And most recently, I was the town manager for the town of Framingham prior to that community making a decision to become a city on January 1st, 2018. So I've been with the Collins Center since last summer. Mary, in turn, is our lead HR practitioner, has an extensive career in labor relations and human resource management over the course of 30 years, including HR functions with the towns of Watertown, Braintree, and Barnstable. She has an equally compelling story to tell about labor relations. But she brings a very, very strong set of HR credentials to the process of recruiting and selecting candidates. My role in this process on behalf of the Collins Center is to work on the front end of this process to completely understand your organization, your organizational needs, the nature of the community, and the environment into which we want to recruit a successful town administrator. Mary is the logistical wizard that will keep us all out of trouble once that process begins, and works an extensive network of public managers in Massachusetts and around New England. Our mission at the Collins Center is to help local governments improve public management on all fronts. We conduct an extensive portfolio of organizational assessments, management studies, problem solving, strategic management, including a wide array of human resource projects. And we bring that breadth of experience in Massachusetts to a pretty extensive network of potential candidates. Our overriding philosophy is to find you is literally the right person with the right set of skills for East Bridgewater. You have our proposal. It's, basically a six-step process, as I mentioned. Heavy engagement on the front end to understand your organization and your organizational needs. Interaction with stakeholders to the extent that that's felt to be desirable is, in our opinion, key to understanding that environment, and key to understanding the community expectations. We have an extensive network of candidates that we're aware of at the moment, but we conduct extensive recruiting and networking to inform ourselves of other potential candidates that would line up well with the profile for this position. Mary conducts a very thorough screening and compilation of those resumes and a presentation to the town of preliminary candidates. She facilitates a preliminary screening in a consensus-based approach to identifying likely semifinalists to bring to preliminary interviews. Also conducted on an open-ended kind of consensus-building approach. From that, we develop with the board a list of selected finalists, facilitate those interviews, conduct a thorough reference check consisting of contact with employers, contact with professional peers, where available, subordinates, and thorough credit listing, credit check, query check, and verification of employment credentials and educational credentials. And then last but not least, to work with the Board of Selectmen to structure an interview process and interview itself that will take this list of candidates and allow the board to make the best possible decision on the fit from that group of candidates. The proposal, I take it, you have copies of the proposal, and I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
Now, do you also do the social media, Google,
Yes,
background checks?
yes.
Okay.
So we do a pretty extensive
right.
array of technology-based.
Okay.
We see Google coming in more on the reference check end of things. It's careful not to get too involved with those types of searches earlier in the process for a variety of reasons.
Any questions?
So when you tap people, say, to apply, like you think, oh, this person would be a good fit, how do you sort of ensure that that person is someone who's actually interested in making a move and coming to work here, and not just someone who's, going through the, oh, it's a good process to have an interview every now and again, it keeps you on your toes?
Sure. Well, as I said, we have a pretty extensive network around Massachusetts. We know who has made a move recently and where they are in the overall progression through a relationship with the community. Progress in a career is a logical set of steps that you would expect people to take. But if someone in particular has accepted a position in the past 2 or 3 years, we would be a little skeptical of a decision to kind of test the waters that soon. So I think that's an art and not a science.
Yeah.
But I think we have a fairly good idea of where people are in their individual career growth.
Okay, I appreciate that. And as far as a screening committee, would you help us in terms of how to put a group together, how to identify people that would, work well, how to,
Yes,
sort of identify those stakeholders and who would be, good and to get a diverse group?
I think we can be very helpful in that. Part of that will come from the first step in the kind of stakeholder identification, community profile of what exactly the role. Screening committees can take several roles. One at one end of the spectrum, purely technical, HR residents and stakeholders who have an HR background that could be helpful on the logistical side of the search, or some communities like to have a great deal of community representation from a transparency standpoint. So we've seen models on either end of that spectrum.
Okay.
And could help you kind of sort through the right balance based on what you see the role of the screening committee being, given the unique climate
Great.
in East Bridgewater.
Thank you.
And what would you recommend for the number of members on that screening committee?
Well, I'm going to err in favor of leaner rather than more expansive, just from the standpoint of if we're looking at conducting this over the summer, just getting people together can be a challenge in the best of times. So I would say probably no more than 7.
In the towns that you've worked with, most of the committee members current department heads, or how do you see the makeup of that? Is it, the
On the
police chief?
screening,
Yeah.
screening committee, I would personally be reluctant to, to recommend a department head on the screening committee. But I think that they are important people to talk about in the profile development end of things. Certainly, other officials who are not anticipated to be reports to the manager might be interesting people to consider on that committee.
Yeah.
But I would be reluctant to put a potential report on a screening committee, basically selecting a boss.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Having said that, I think it's important to engage those people on the front end.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely part of the process, but maybe not on the committee.
Correct.
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
like that idea.
At the end, when we get down to the final 3 candidates and we're getting ready to bring someone on board, do you come in and give us your expertise in what we should be offering for a salary for the potential employee based on surveys you've done in the area or wherever we are at
Yeah,
that point?
Yes, I think that we're in a position to offer some guidance on what a competitive salary is for a community of the size and complexity of East Bridgewater. I think it's important that those negotiations be carried out by the town and not by the recruiter, but we would certainly have insight into competitive salary, competitive packages, and sample contracts, employment agreements, if that's an interest. But I think it's an advisory role rather than a hands-on negotiation.
Correct, right.
Any other questions?
No.
No.
You
Great.
covered everything.
Appreciate you coming
Yeah.
in.
Tell Mary, I work with Mary when she's done some work in the town of Carver, so.
Oh,
tell
did
her
you
that
really?
I missed her tonight. Yeah,
Well,
she
great.
did a whole HR audit for the town a couple years ago.
Well, I wish you all the best in this process. You'll have an interesting summer.
Nothing gets done in New England in the
I hope
summer.
we get to
The
meet you
timing
all
is
again.
just
Okay,
terrible.
great. Thank you
Thanks
very much for
coming in.
having us.
All right,
Nice to
thanks
meet
a lot,
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
Appreciate it.
All right, so thoughts on presentations? You guys want to think about it for a couple days? and-
Yeah, I think we should take what we have for notes and so on and maybe plan another meeting at some point in time to
Yeah,
Yeah,
come back and discuss our thoughts on it.
and you guys want to meet Friday morning maybe? Is that,
I could do Friday, would have to be
yeah,
early.
I can do that.
you do like 9 o'clock maybe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay,
All right, so yeah, Rebecca, we just post a meeting so we can,
Just a regular meeting.
regular meeting, 9 AM, and just so we can choose the firm.
yeah,
Choose the form?
Mm-hmm.
discuss it anyhow.
And discuss.
discuss, yeah. I think we can't go wrong with any of them, but I think it'd be good
I
to,
bet we all have our own thoughts
I
already.
bet we do too.
So,
Which will not be conveyed to each
I mean, do
other.
you want to put it on to vote, and then if,
Yeah.
we need
Yeah.
more time, we
Yeah.
can,
To
Yeah.
choose a.
to choose,
Yeah.
yeah.
To choose, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
For the town administrative search.
So, I mean, I know we've only got Mr. Longo here for a certain period of time.
Well, we
and
definitely have to
summer's
get this
coming up.
done.
Move, and
Yeah.
summer is not an easy time to do stuff,
Yeah.
so.
That's
Like,
why
the
we're
more
gonna
we
have
can
to
get
be-
done right
when we
away.
get to that screening committee, and I agree, 3's not enough, and anything beyond 7's too many.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
5 to
What
7.
we have to do is, it's very important, is that commitment from those 5 to 7
Mhm.
people
Yep,
during the summer.
Yep.
Yeah. And like you
No.
said, everyone's traveling, it's gonna be tough to get everyone together with
Oh.
different schedules.
well, maybe we can
that's-
pick people based on what week of July they're gonna be gone for. If they're all gonna be gone the same week.
They could-
We even scattered to the
I know,
winds a
we
little
do,
bit.
yep.
You gotta start coming up to Maine, we're gonna have to post meetings up in Maine this summer.
That's fine.
Zach, you can travel to Maine, no?
Let's check the budget
Yeah.
first. Okay. so
Yeah, let's
move
move
on.
Friday morning into that,
Alright.
great.
Action items, Mr. Chairman.
Right.
I move to approve the minutes of the April 22nd, 2019 Board of Selectmen's meeting that was held at 6:30.
Right.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Let's see, we already went to the TA report.
Announcements?
Yeah. Announcements, Rebecca?
No.
No. All right, nothing, that's fine.
Must be contagious.
Moving it along.
I
think
had
that's
a sheet.
Rebecca's way of saying we're moving this along.
I had a sheet with some announcements with some upcoming events, but I can't find it.
All right,
Alrighty.
and board discussions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep. Let's see, I'd like to go over the citizens recall petition. I know this was sent in years ago, is the
2015 to be exact.
2015, one of the town citizens put it forward at town meeting, moved ahead, went to the State House where it unfortunately just,
Died in
a
committee?
slow,
Died in committee if it made it to a
long death.
committee.
Yes. So we're at the point now we have to resubmit it. I've had Chris, one of the town attorneys, look it over. We'd have to vote on it at town meeting, so I would like to get it on the town meeting in June, and we'll send it back up to the State House, and hopefully the second time is a little luckier than the first. I mean, we can't control what they do up there, but at least, we're following through on our end, I think.
Yeah, it's,
So,
again, the people have voted on it once at town meeting. It'll be up to them to vote for it again.
Mhm.
The problem with, this petition for the recall is, there's nothing attached to it. If I don't like you in any elected position in town, then I can sit there and get 100 signatures and cost the town $6,000
Yeah.
to have an election.
But then they need the additional signatures from each precinct.
Correct.
So there's a little bit of work
It's not an
involved,
easy
but,
process, but,
no.
let the people decide.
Yeah, and I just think, even Attorney Clifford said, he says it's pretty boilerplate that most towns have this.
Do they really? I didn't think that,
I thought John had said that
think
once.
that they did. I talked to Rocco, I don't know, I'd be curious, though, about
I
the
don't,
statistics on that, because I
I
don't
don't
know.
believe there's that many,
I
because
thought it was kind of rare.
even I believe the people sitting up in Massachusetts, which may or may not be the reason that they didn't come out of committee, is you have your recall provision already. The next
Every
time
3
you're up
years.
for re-election.
Yeah.
Go to that ballot box.
But anyhow, but, yeah, that's fine.
All right, and then the other thing is uploading our backup agenda items to the website.
I'm fine with that.
You know, and I was talking with Rebecca, I mean, I don't, like the standard paperwork that we get with either the action items or the minutes should all be uploaded so folks at home can just go on the computer or their devices and follow through. I was looking at the West Bridgewater website, and that's, exactly how they have it set up. It's
Very
great,
extensive,
so,
the amount of
yeah.
information that's there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think, with the amount of paperwork right now that we get with licenses, that, I think that would take up a lot of your time at year end when we're doing all those licenses, so that I don't think we need to upload, but I think
But,
the rest of the year.
But and again, if we make a decision that we're going to put our backup material, then I believe we can't make a decision just because we have 3,000 licenses coming up that we would have to include that background.
I wonder if there's a.
Unless there's a way of sitting there saying, we have a discretion on whether or not we put it on there. And then you're getting
'Cause I don't
into
think we're
then you're
required.
getting into a problem.
But I don't think we're required to put anything up. I mean, we're not required by
Just the
law to
agenda.
add that.
We might have to put some sort of disclaimer on the agenda.
Yeah.
That we're not, I mean, if there's things that because sometimes we have additional action items too.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's something that
Comes in a little
comes
late.
up,
Yeah.
it's not on the website, then,
And some of the information on some of this backup, again, may have to be redacted.
It would have to,
Oh,
some
yeah.
of it's
And that's, again, we're
Private.
gonna have to determine, before we go that far ahead, is who's gonna make that, decision on what has to be redacted? Who is going to make the decision on, like you talk, year-end licenses, 2,000 of them, whatever there are. Do we have the authority, if we say we're gonna, put all the backup information on there, do we all of a sudden say, but we're not gonna do it for licenses? Because the people may wanna know, the background of the person
Yeah.
filling out that form, the same as anything else that we're putting
Yeah.
out there, so.
I have
Yeah,
no problem doing it.
Right.
I think, like, I was talking to Rocco, and so he was saying this should open up a dialogue about you guys getting, not laptops.
iPads.
tablets.
iPads,
iPads, yeah, he
Um,
said that to me too.
So the way it looks like, how West Bridgewater has it on there, they do it as a packet. So they just, seems to me, I don't know if this is how they do it, I could call them and see how they do it, but they just scan it right through, and to me, it's just all one PDF, and they probably push it right through to the selectmen. I'm assuming that they don't have these binders.
No paper,
Yeah.
no paper
Right,
copies of
exactly.
everything, so it would save,
Yeah, if you want to
It's
give
a
them a call
different-
and see,
I was
you
gonna-
know, see how they do it, and
Yeah.
especially the licenses.
That's how it seems like.
And I wonder with
Has
the
it all in one packet.
licenses, if there's some way to just do that electronically too. I mean, the amount of paperwork involved in that, you know, whether, you know,
Right.
do it electronically, make it easier for you as well, so,
But it would be better if, I mean, because I can put the backup there, no problem.
yeah.
I would suggest, why not reach out to West Bridgewater and see? Because it would almost seem like we'd need to have a policy saying, this is the information that we put out there, this is information that we don't, like things that are private in nature that, you know,
Right.
somebody's social security number on an application or something
Right,
like that.
and-
But, you know, if they've got a policy in place that we can sort of
Take a look at.
take
Yeah.
a look at and, you know, make it meet the needs for us, and then
Yeah,
maybe
I-
talk to them about the
I
process
think
that
that's
they
a
use.
good
I
idea,
think
and
that would be.
Why don't we table this
All
till
right.
Carol just
Yeah.
volunteered to find out all this information from West Bridgewater?
Well, I think Rebecca
I
said she
think
would talk
Rebecca
to
would offer, she'd call.
talk to the, whoever the head of their administrative stuff is in the selectman's office.
All right, so, yeah, report back to us. Let
I'd be
us know what
curious
you
to
find,
know more. I
guess,
think
yeah.
I think it's great information for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like that people could just do it from home.
It,
And
it is, but we just have to be careful, make sure we're
absolutely.
not putting something out there
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
bite us later on.
And, you know, a couple other things, I just wanted to thank the fire department for their quick response on Anna Drive the other night.
Yep.
The Feeney family had a fire, they were all home while it occurred, and they all got out, thank God.
It's right around the corner.
Yeah, yeah, and just let folks know, they did set up a GoFundMe page. You'll be able to Google it to pull it up. You know, just help them with their short-term expenses till hopefully the insurance kicks in. And also, I saw online the Spigone Fund, this will be
Yeah.
their last year, so I just really want to thank the, you know, Peter Spigone Jr. I mean, he's helped out, you know, unbelievable amount of kids over the years with sports tuition and other things they've done over the town over the years. You know, we all really appreciate what he's done over the years.
They did an amazing job
Mm-hmm.
keeping Skylar's memory alive by doing that. And what a
Yeah.
gift to the community to turn their tragedy into something that we could all, you know, rally around and you know, really benefit the people who live here. It's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
amazing.
And based on the fact that this will be their last walk, I think we should do everything in our power to make it the best one yet.
We can all walk.
Yep, no problem. That's a
Do you
commitment.
guys need to vote on the recall position to put it on to the warrant, or no?
Can we do it as part of the warrant? We can't vote on it anyways, right? Because it's a discussion,
Yeah.
not an
Yeah, just
action item.
discussion.
I
Would
thought
it-
he said that if it's on the agenda, you can vote on it, but I could be wrong.
We'll get that clarified for next meeting.
If we have to, we could add it
Put
to
it
the
on there for
Friday
next
The
morning
next
meeting.
meeting is the pre-town meeting forum, and. it-
Right,
And the warrant will be
We'll do
done.
it Friday morning now.
Oh, okay.
Friday morning meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought Chris said that you had to vote on that.
Then, just one last thing, letter we got from, Robert DeFazio. He's looking to, install a, flagpole next to the 9/11 memorial. So I contacted John Haynes to see what we could do to help him out on our end, but he's looking to do it at no cost to the town.
Yep.
So, you know, just wanna thank him for that offer, and hopefully we'll be moving ahead with that soon.
Yep,
Very
yep.
kind of him to do that.
Yeah, he
Right.
approached me at Kiwanis last week and was hoping that we would support it, and I said,
I believe on June
Of course.
13th, which is Flag Day, we had a new flagpole installed by the DPW a couple of months ago down to the community center. I've received a flag that was flown over everything has to be anonymous, the family doesn't want it, but they're donating a flag to put on there, and we'll do a dedication probably on Flag Day for both the flag and for the flagpole.
Great.
But we'll get further information out on that.
good.
Great.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.